Sometimes, life can catch us off guard in the most extraordinary ways. You step into what seems like a routine weekend with a friend, and suddenly, everything shifts. This is a story of self-discovery, the delicate intensity of a first love, and the undeniable spark that ignites between two people when they least expect it. What began as just another night staying over at my best friend's house turned into an experience etched in my memory, a story of heartbeats quickening in the stillness of midnight, of gazes meeting like never before, and of a bond growing deeper than I could have imagined. This is my story, a true gay romance, and I want you to feel every glance, every emotion, and every fleeting moment right alongside me. The first time it happened, I wasn't prepared. I had known my best friend Ryan since middle school, bond built from late-night video games, bike rides across town, and laughter so deep it left our stomachs aching. By the time we were 19, crashing at his place was second nature. His home felt like mine. The evening was meant to follow the same pattern as countless others. A sleepover, a pizza box between us, game controllers in hand, music humming in the background. His parents were away for the weekend, so the house was ours for 2 days. Except this time, there was someone else. His older brother, Ethan. Ethan was 22, 3 years older than us, and everything Ryan wasn't: composed, reserved, and undeniably magnetic. He carried an effortless presence that commanded attention without needing to say much. Tall frame, broad shoulders, sharp features, but also an air of quiet intensity that made him seem untouchable. I hadn't spent much time around him before that night. Sure, we'd crossed paths before, exchanged casual greetings. I might have admired him in passing, but he was Ryan's brother, off limits, or at least, that's how I saw it. Ryan grinned after losing yet another round of our racing game. "Dude, you're terrible," I teased as he shoved my shoulder playfully in frustration. We sprawled out on the living room floor, surrounded by a mess of snack wrappers and soda cans under the glowing light of the TV screen. It felt safe, predictable until Ethan walked in. He was dressed in a loose grey t-shirt and sweatpants, his damp hair hinting at a recent shower. At first, he didn't even glance at me. But when his eyes finally landed on mine, something shifted. "Still playing the same old games, huh?" His voice was calm yet edged with subtle teasing that earned an eye roll from Ryan. "Don't act like you weren't obsessed with this when you were in high school." Ryan shot back. Ethan smirked, grabbed a water bottle from the kitchen counter, and leaned against it in a way that seemed effortless but drew all my focus toward him. He glanced in my direction briefly. His gaze was sharp and impossible to read. I told myself it was meaningless, a single look blown out of proportion by my own thoughts, but my chest tightened all the same. Hours later, Ryan was out cold, as usual. His steady snoring filled the living room where we'd set up our sleeping bags. While he slept soundly beside me, I lay awake on my back, staring at the ceiling, restless. My mind refused to settle. I blamed caffeine, or sugar, or post-game adrenaline, but deep down I knew it wasn't any of those things. It was Ethan. I hadn't realized anyone else was awake until I heard soft footsteps from down the hallway. My heart skipped when I saw him standing at the doorway with arms crossed beneath his dimly lit face. "Can't sleep?" he asked quietly. Turning toward him, I fumbled for words. "Yeah, just too awake, I guess." He gave a slight nod before moving into the room, carefully not waking Ryan, and settling onto the couch directly opposite me. The silence that followed felt heavy but not awkward. Instead, it buzzed with something unspoken. His gaze seemed to linger on me, studying in a way that left my skin alive with awareness. "You're here a lot," he commented after a pause. "Yeah," I replied quickly. "Ryan's like family to me." Something shifted in his expression. Curiosity. Maybe something more, but he didn't press further as he leaned back slightly. The minutes dragged on while I tried to calm myself down and ignore how different this moment felt with every second passing by. Then he spoke again, his voice quieter now, but somehow sharper. "Do you always stay up this late when you're here?" Pulse quickened as his gaze returned to me and stayed there this time, pointed, yet soft. This wasn't casual anymore. This wasn't just small talk or polite sibling observation. It felt charged. Magnetic. Letting his arm drape along the back of the couch. It was a small movement, subtle, but it sent an electric charge through me. My breath hitched as I tried to steady myself, my gaze locked on the screen, though I wasn't processing anything. My heart was beating too loud, too fast, drowning out everything else. Ethan's presence was all-consuming, occupying every corner of my mind. I could feel his quiet confidence, the way he seemed completely at ease while I sat there on edge, trying not to betray the storm raging inside me. "You're quiet," Ethan said suddenly, his voice low but sharp enough to break the silence. I glanced at him, hoping my face wasn't as red as it felt. "Just tired," I mumbled. He studied me for a moment, his expression hard to read. "You sure about that?" The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. I swallowed, pressing myself into the cushion as if that could somehow create distance between us. "Yeah," I lied. The faintest smirk ghosted across his lips, and he shifted closer just slightly, but enough to unsettle me even further. "Okay," he muttered, his voice softer, almost teasing. Then he turned his attention back to the screen, as if he hadn't just turned my entire world upside down with those 2 syllables. Minutes passed, or maybe it was hours. Time didn't seem to move the way it should anymore. My body was tense with the weight of his proximity, and the confusion tangled in my chest. His earlier words echoed in my mind. "You're different, more thoughtful, more aware." What had he meant by that? And why did I care so much? I shouldn't care, it didn't make sense to care. But then I caught the faintest movement, a glance from him out of the corner of my eye, and realized I wasn't the only one failing at pretending nothing had changed. Words held me captive. I couldn't deflect, couldn't run, couldn't do anything but stay immersed in the moment that was too heavy to break. My voice, when it came, was quiet, almost a whisper. "What if you're wrong?" He tilted his head slightly, his eyes narrowing like he was trying to find the right path through uncharted territory. "I'm not." Time seemed to stretch, each second bringing a sharp awareness of his closeness, of the shared air between us. I wanted to say something clever, something that would make it easier or maybe even shatter the tension between us. But no words came, just the sound of my heartbeat thundering in my ears. Ethan leaned closer, just a fraction, testing, waiting for something unspoken. "You're not the only one who's been lying awake," he repeated softly, the words like a thread tugging us closer. I felt my chest tighten, my breath catching again. I could barely think beyond the way his gaze latched on mine like he was searching for permission. Or maybe he already knew it was there. The vulnerability in the air made me feel exposed, raw in a way that terrified and thrilled me all at once. And then, just as it had hovered all night in the unease of almosts and maybes, the distance between us finally evaporated. His lips brushed mine, tentative at first, soft and questioning. It was like stepping into warmth after a lifetime spent out in the cold. The kiss wasn't hurried or impulsive, felt deliberate and sure, but delicate enough to crack me open entirely. For a fleeting second, I froze, overwhelmed by how much this moment carried. But then, instinct took over. I leaned into him, my hands drifting up to his shoulders as his fingers grazed against mine. The connection was electric, undeniable. We pulled apart, breath mingling, our faces so close, I could feel every exhale on my skin. He didn't say anything he didn't need to. This wasn't something words could ever fully capture, but we both jumped slightly when there was a creak from somewhere down the hallway. Ethan immediately stood, retreating like it had all been a spell broken too soon. I felt deprived of warmth when he moved away. "Good night," he murmured under his breath before disappearing into the shadows. I didn't sleep that night either. Instead, I laid there with my limbs heavy and my thoughts tangled in what had just happened. What we'd just crossed into didn't have an easy way back. It felt too big for us to leave it untouched. Now by morning, I could still feel his kiss, like a ghost, lingering on my mouth. But when I found him sitting out on the porch with Ryan laughing at some joke I couldn't hear, you'd never have known anything had changed. He slipped back into his effortless calm, like nothing had happened, but when his eyes met mine briefly over the rim of his coffee cup, my heart stuttered again. We didn't talk about it that day or even the next one. But somehow, I knew this wasn't over. There was no putting that storm back in the bottle after feeling its power firsthand. And, for better or worse, I knew deep down, we were bound to collide again about you either. His words hung in the air, heavy and electric, charging the room with an intensity neither of us could escape. I felt my chest tighten, my heart racing as if it were trying to match the unspoken rhythm between us. There was no pretending anymore, no denying what had been there all along. Ethan took another step closer, his movements cautious yet deliberate, as though testing the fragile space we still occupied. My entire body hummed with anticipation. Every nerve screamed at me to close the gap, to reach out, to see where this moment would take us. But I stayed rooted in place, barely breathing. "You have no idea how long I've been fighting this," he muttered, his voice low and rippling with everything he'd been holding back. His eyes met mine, and for a fleeting second, his composure slipped. I saw it clearly: vulnerability, desire, uncertainty, all the things he'd tried to hide. "Then stop fighting," I said, the words coming out softer than I intended, but resolute all the same. The courage it took to say them left me trembling, but I meant every syllable. His lips curved upward, barely a smile, but enough to send my heart soaring. "You have no idea what you're asking," he murmured as he reached up, tucking a stray strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered against my skin, warm and impossibly gentle. "I know exactly what I'm asking," I whispered, leaning into his touch. And I did more than anything, I knew. Time seemed to stretch then, as if the moment existed in some other world, separate from everything else. Slowly, ever so slowly, Ethan closed the remaining distance between us. His hand rested lightly against my cheek, his thumb brushing across my skin in a way that made every thought fade into nothingness. When his lips finally met mine, the tension that had been building for so long broke like a dam. The kiss was soft yet intense, tentative but searing with the weight of everything we hadn't said aloud until now. The world fell away. There was only him, the warmth of his mouth, the feel of his hand cradling my face, the sensation of finally crossing a line we could never uncross. When we pulled apart, our foreheads still touching, neither of us moved to speak right away. My eyes fluttered open to find his already watching me, searching for something only I could give him. I smiled softly, my heart full despite its relentless pounding. He smiled back, genuine this time, his features melting into something achingly tender. But reality wasn't far behind. I heard it creeping in at the edges of my mind like an unwelcome shadow. The gravity of what had just happened settled between us, a reminder that nothing about this was simple. "Ryan, .. I started cautiously. Already hating where my thoughts were going, Ethan sighed heavily and stepped back. Just enough for the chill of distance to creep between us. "I know," he said quietly, running a hand through his hair. The barely there sorrow in his tone cut deeper than I'd like to admit, but pretending this doesn't exist won't make it go away. I nodded because he was right. As complicated as everything was about to get, ignoring what had just happened, what had been growing between us all along wasn't an option anymore. Ethan looked at me for a long moment before shaking his head lightly and breaking the silence once more. "We'll figure it out," he said with a conviction that startled me. And though neither of us really knew how or when or what would come next, I found myself believing him anyway, because now that we'd crossed that line, there was no turning back even if the fall would be messy. His voice dropped, low and restrained. "And what? You think this is easy for me?" I stepped closer, my heart drumming against my ribs. "No, but it's real. Isn't it?" He didn't answer right away, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the edge of the counter. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating, before he exhaled sharply and looked at me, his gaze softer now. "Of course, it's real. That's the problem." Somewhere deep down, I knew he was right. There was too much at stake, Ryan, the trust we both risked shattering. The fragile balance of everything we had known before this, yet standing there with him in the dim light of the kitchen. All I could think of was how right it had felt every time he looked at me, like I was his whole world. "I can't stop," I admitted quietly, my voice trembling but resolute. "And I don't think you can either." Ethan pressed a palm over his face as if trying to shut out the truth in my words. When his hand fell away, the conflict in his expression was impossible to ignore. Love and fear battling for dominance. "This isn't a decision we can just make because it feels good," he said, though his voice cracked under the weight of his emotions. "We have to be smarter than this." I stepped even closer now, a breath away from him. "Smarter? Smarter how?" "By pretending it doesn't exist. By acting like this thing between us is nothing." He didn't respond, but I saw it in his eyes. The fire still burned, no matter how hard he tried to extinguish it. Silence wrapped itself around us again, pulling tighter and tighter. "Say something," I finally whispered, desperate for any confirmation that I wasn't alone in this storm. But instead of speaking, Ethan shifted forward and kissed me again, unexpectedly but intentionally, as if it was an answer all on its own. This kiss wasn't cautious or hesitant like before. It was desperate, fervent, carrying the weight of everything we couldn't say aloud. When he pulled away, his forehead rested against mine, both of us breathing hard in the stillness that followed. "I don't know where this is going," he murmured softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I do know, I can't stay away from you." My eyes closed at his confession, tears pricking at the edges but not falling. "Then don't," I replied simply. It was reckless, selfish even, but in that moment, no rationale mattered more than the truth between us. The floorboards creaked somewhere. Down the hall, a reminder that time wasn't ours to lose. Ethan straightened immediately, swallowing hard, his mask sliding back into place as he turned away from me and toward the stairs. Without another word, he disappeared into the darkened hallway, leaving me standing alone in the kitchen with only the rapid beat of my heart to fill the silence. But even as he left, I knew just like he did we were already too far gone to turn back now. What I expected, but it wasn't that. There was a bittersweet edge to his voice, though his smile hinted at relief. The tension that had been suffocating us was finally gone, replaced by something fragile but infinitely lighter. I reached for his hand, threading my fingers through his. "It feels strange, doesn't it? Not having to sneak around or pretend like this isn't happening." My voice was soft, almost disbelieving. He nodded, his thumb brushing against my skin in a way that sent warmth rushing through me. "Yeah, strange, but good." The night stretched on as we sat there, neither of us eager to break the stillness. The stars above blinked down as if sharing a quiet understanding, their light, dim but constant. Ethan turned to me, his expression softer than I'd ever seen. For a moment, he looked as though he wanted to say something profound, or maybe just something honest, but instead, he leaned closer and kissed me. This time, it wasn't hurried or desperate. It was steady, a shorter reflection of everything we'd just begun to share freely. No more half-truths, no more stolen moments hidden in shadows. It was just us, and for the first time in what felt like forever, that was enough. Uncertainty lingered, relief, or fear. "Both," I replied, threading my fingers through his. "At least now we can face the fear together." He gently squeezed my hand, his eyes warm in the dim light. "You're something else, you know that." Resting my head on his shoulder, my chest finally felt at peace. "So are you." For the first time since this journey began, the storm inside me settled. I wasn't just holding on to a secret anymore. I was holding on to him. Looking back, it all feels cinematic, the tension, the hidden moments, the risk, and the moment everything was laid bare. But it wasn't truly about almost being discovered, or even about that first kiss. The real story was discovering something I didn't realize I was searching for. It was about how Ethan saw me when I couldn't see myself. About how love finds its way into your life when you least expect it, transforming everything. Staying over at my friend's house led to unexpected plans. Plans woven by his brother that ended with something I never imagined finding. Love.